Saturday morning cartoons were awesome. From the 1960s through the 1990s, we kicked off each weekend in a frenzy of animation that is unmatched today.
But were these shows actually any good? Join us as we dig into the history of your favorite and not so favorite Saturday morning cartoons, look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of each one, and determine if our nostalgia matches the reality when it comes to these tunes.
So stay in your PJs, grab a bowl of cereal, and settle in. I'm John.
And I'm Robert.
And this is Toon Talk.
So John.
Yeah.
Have you ever solved a Rubik's Cube?
No, never. Not once.
Not one version of it, whether it's like the basic cube or like they have like, they put out like a head of Homer Simpson or other things like that.
Yeah,
like
or a snake
licensed.
or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a Rubik brand, but there was a pyramid version that I could solve.
Okay.
But the rest of, I had no idea. I've got one sitting here on the table and I completed green, but it's in the wrong spot.
Yeah, that's about my level.
Yeah.
One side, maybe two.
Maybe two, yeah.
Yeah,
if you're lucky, you get a whole level.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I've never solved one myself, so I cannot attest to if you complete it, if it actually comes to life in a very annoying voice and does...
and a weird little face.
Yes, and crazy shenanigans happen. But
yeah.
If this cartoon that we're talking about is any indication, I will never finish a Rubik's Cube because I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, you've got a reason not to now.
Exactly. So our cartoon for this episode is Rubik the Amazing Cube. God help us. Do you recall anything about this when it first aired?
Nothing.
Okay.
I don't have any recollection of this other than the toy. You know, everyone knows what the toy, the Rubik's Cube, but I don't remember the cartoon at all.
I remember it being on. I assume I watched because I remember it being. I remember being paired with the Pac-Man show.
Okay.
And I probably watched like a handful of Pac-Man episodes.
Yeah, that's weird because I remember the Pac-Man show, but I don't remember this.
Well, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Because there might be a reason for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't really recall it. I remember it being on, and I'm sure I watched probably like I can guarantee I didn't sit down and watch a whole episode of this.
Yeah.
It never would have happened. It was hard enough to do it now when we're trying to do it. So.
Yeah, I was watching it intently and still didn't.
But I guess a dive into Rubik the Amazing Cube needs to start in Hungary in 1974. And that's within the mind of architecture teacher Erno Rubik.
It was named after a person.
Yes, so it was actually the last name, Erno Rubik. He was a teacher, and he was focused on trying to find a scientific and mathematical way to teach three-dimensional movement to his students.
Okay.
How anybody thinks like that's what they're, I guess it's you got to be a certain mind in order to create this and have that mentality. But so he focused on over a handful of months. He created this cube, made up of smaller blocks, and they're all held together with like the initial one is all rubber bands and some glue and some paper clips so that he could turn it and twist it and try to put all the sides together of different colors.
9 cubes on one side.
Yeah, and he called it his magic cube. Of course, he had no idea he could even put it back into place when he built it. He put it together thinking, okay, now I need to figure out how to solve it.
Okay.
And so he had to figure out the math.
He puzzled
behind
himself.
It. Yeah, so and it took him, I think, almost just shy of a full month for himself to just sit down and focus on this thing and figure out how to solve it. When he did, he figured out what the mathematical solution to it is, because it is math and science. It's not a the way I do it. I just fumble around like, okay, I'm going to twist. Maybe this will work, and that made it worse. But okay.
Well, architects are weird people because they're like mathematicians, but they're also good at art.
Yeah.
So you usually don't see those people hanging out together. And he's both.
Yeah. So his magic cube actually was quite popular with the students, and so he actually decided to try and make a go with that as a toy, and it started showing up in Hungarian toy stores in 1977. It was actually went into international toy fairs, kind of through Europe particularly, and in 1979 at the Nuremberg Toy Fair, it would be discovered by the Ideal Toy Company based out of the United States. They would bring it back and mass manufacture it starting in 1980, and it became a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, it was everywhere.
Right.
I mean, you may not remember the cartoon, but you remember the ads and everything was like you could not get away from a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, it was the it toy. Everyone had to have it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in order to, Magic Cube was kind of vague, and they thought, well, a Rubik's Cube, it's Rubik, R-U-B-I-K apostrophe S.
Right.
So his cube we're going to rename it after him and we're going to sell it. And it became massive. And, you know, as we've seen from other episodes in this podcast, anything popular is fair game for a gratuitous cash grab.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Which is what that was.
Yeah.
So if you got the Rubik's Cube at like the Dollar Tree, is it called Rick's Cube? You know, it's like the generic version of Rubik's Cube.
It's Rubix.
Yes. Yeah, when you mentioned this cartoon, I didn't remember it, obviously. But I was like, how? So the toy was incredibly popular, huge. And other cartoons we've talked about, the cartoons were created to sell a toy. But this was a toy that was already incredibly successful. And I was thinking, well, why did they need a cartoon? So was it just to sell ads and get money from the cartoon, not necessarily to boost sales?
Yeah, it's not unlike like Pac-Man,
Yeah.
which will, interestingly enough, ties slightly into the story. But other, it's kind of like the Care Bears. The Care Bears were cards.
Yeah.
You know, sympathy or you know, birthday cards. And then they turned like, well, we can make money off this. You know, welcome to Reagan's America.
Yeah.
Anything can be, you know, thrown up on TV for a buck.
The trickle-down economics.
And that's kind of how this came about. Like, well, it's super popular, but how do we make it more? How do we make more money off of this? Okay. So that's where it came. That's where the
mission failed because it made me hate that little cube.
Well, I'd say that the fact that nobody really remembers this cartoon exists is not insignificant.
Yeah.
So, so it's 1983, 1982. CBS television has a hit on their hands with Pac-Man. Obviously, Pac-Man fever swept everybody, and they're like, "Well, we got to put that on TV." They make a cartoon of it, and it actually proves to be really popular.
Yeah, I remember the cartoon. I liked it.
And they brought it back for another year, and they figured, well, if one commercial cash-in is good, let's pair it with another one. And in this case, they decided, well, what's more lovable than a inanimate cube?
Right.
And so they decided, yep, that's it. That's our gold. And so they reach out to Ruby Spears Entertainment. So the name Ruby and Spears are going to be ring the bells because Joe Ruby and Ken Spears were former Hanna-Barbera animators.
Right.
They actually were key animators on Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?
Okay. And
would actually kind of be on the scene at Hanna-Barbera for the first half of the 70s, up through the first half of the 70s, and they realized they've kind of hit their ceiling at the company. They're not going to be able to move up any higher. They're frustrated, so they're like, let's just do our own thing. And so they split off and they create their own production company, Ruby Spears Enterprises. And they would eventually kind of make their mark on Saturday mornings with Thundar the Barbarian in 1980. They do, actually, same year as Rubik, they had Alvin and the Chipmunks, which is a remake. And then everybody's all-time favorite, Mr. T.
They did that?
Yeah, I was trying to go through everything that they did, and Mr. T was probably number 3 of the most popular things that they've done. So that doesn't tell you a whole lot to me.
Yeah, but there's some good cartoons there. But
the first two, but Mr. T. But it's one that would be recognized. There's a whole bunch of other ones that like they're barely recognizable to me, and I'm like, nobody else is going to know.
Right.
Some of this stuff, like the Biscuits or other things. Actually, it may not even be the Biscuits. It may have been some kind of knock-up of that. But so Ruby Spears, they try to have to. Their conundrum is now, how do we take this block of squares and make it a character, to write a story around it? Yeah. So they take an inanimate toy block. Over the course of 20 minutes, they decide to make it come alive when it's solved, and that's it. I mean, that is like how entertaining it is another matter, but that's like, let's just make it alive. So the way they introduce this when you watch it is it's through the opening credits, which is not unusual for Saturday morning
to
cartoons.
Tell the backstory.
Here's the quick summary. The gist of it is the Rodriguez kids, these 3 kids, are walking down the street, and a magician stagecoach goes by. You know, we've all seen stagecoaches go flying by all the time. I mean, it's
especially in the 80s.
And this Rubik cube falls off. They call it Rubik cube. It's not Rubik's. It's Rubik cube.
Yeah, his name is Rubik.
It falls off the stagecoach. The younger boy, Carlos, picks it up, solves it, because
that's what you do.
Everybody can. And it comes to life, and there you go. There's your origin.
We have no idea. Face and feet, but no arms.
Yeah, we have no idea where he actually comes from. Right. How the magician got it. It doesn't really matter, ultimately.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it probably would have been nice after sitting through 12 episodes to actually get some kind of backstory, because that would have helped.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's just basically these kids find a cube and it comes to life, and hey,
we've got this thing.
Sit down for 20 more minutes while we weave a tale of something. Yeah, and so, like I said, the storyline followed the three Rodriguez children. It would, they would wander around with Rubik. Each episode found them in different adventures, from mundane to slightly less mundane. Mm-hmm. The actual evil magician, the whole guy behind the whole thing, shows up for one episode.
Right, and wants his cube back.
And then he's gone, and that's all the end of it. But then usually it's like bullies. Yeah. There's some awkward romantic interests for Ronaldo, the oldest of the Rodriguez boys. Yep. And then otherwise there's a ghost that they find in Hawaii. There's an evil genius, and I use that term loosely.
Sure.
Dog nappers and other random hoodlums. Basically kind of like your catch-all of like Saturday morning cartoon tropes.
Right.
Of
we need a bad guy, we need a ghost, we need bullies.
That's pretty much how the episodes went. Rubik debuted on September 10th, 1983, and it was the second half of the Pac-Man Rubik the Amazing Cube Hour. They ran 12 episodes. It was canceled before the 1984 season, shockingly.
Yeah.
It returned again for who knows what reason in 1985. They didn't do any new episodes. They just took those original 12 and just ran them again for part of a season. And then that was the end of Rubik the Amazing Cube on television.
Yeah.
They talk about it being forgettable, that there's not even... I can't find any example of it being released on VHS. I mean, this is the 80s, the cash-in. It may have been, but I can't find any proof that it was.
Right.
It clearly has never been released on DVD.
No. I watched it on YouTube.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that may have been played a part into why this was so hard to watch, but it was... Yeah. I mean, it's just bad scans from like VHS that was uploaded uploaded on YouTube, and it's just grainy.
The sound is bad.
Various levels of hard to see.
But what you need to see.
Yeah. But that's pretty much the backstory of Rubik the Amazing Cube. What did you think after
like the cartoon, there's not a lot there. I watched it. So the cube, Rubik has magic abilities when he's together, and he helps them get out of problems or whatever, But usually he's causing the problems. Mm-hmm. So they'd have all his colors aligned. They'd get into trouble, and he would just bounce out of whatever they're in, off the bike or out of the basket or out of a hand or something, and get all tangled up. Oh no, we got to quick solve him so he can help us again. You'd think they'd be better at it by the fifth or sixth episode, that someone other than Carlos could solve this.
They don't handle stress well.
They don't. They panic and they can't get it quite right. And sometimes Rubik would jump and mix himself up on purpose, like to make it difficult for these kids to solve their problems. I'm like, I would throw this thing in the river. It's like, this thing isn't worth the trouble it's given us.
Well, and I think the first thing we have to talk about is the voice associated with Rubik, because Lord help me, it makes you want to chuck your TV out the window.
Yeah. I'm Rubik. It's pretty close. But, it's interesting that the voice is annoying, because this character, this actor who played the voice, made a fortune being annoying as Arnold Horshack on the Welcome Back, Kotter show. Ron Palillo, I did not know this, but I learned he was a Shakespearean actor. Toured with Macbeth, Taming of the Shrew, A Midnight Summer's Dream. Shared the stage with Mickey Rourke. So had a phenomenal acting career on stage, and then became Arnold Horshack on Welcome Back, Kotter. And I found out that as Rubik, he had to speak slowly, and they sped it up to get that annoying, high-pitched, I'm Rubik.
Yeah, and then add a giggle to it.
Yeah, and then added the giggle, and he had this blue face, and it's just, it was painful.
And I don't know what his normal speaking voices. You just know Horseshack, which
sure.
I mean, maybe maybe he's just like a Gilbert Gottfried level voice of just like
could be
just annoying. But I give him a little bit of leeway that maybe that was just it was an affected voice to kind of like play up the Horseshack character.
Sure.
But either way, this is
So the other actors, it's weird because some of them like, okay, that makes sense, and the rest of them like, I don't know who this person is, and they never did anything else. Mm-hmm. Michael Cicero played Carlos. He had an arc on General Hospital in the 60s, and now he's a stay-at-home dad. Studied law, and now he's a dad.
Oh, good on him.
Yeah, good for him. Jennifer Fajardo played Lisa. She did a movie with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau called Buddy Buddy. She was the Polynesian girl. And then Angela Moya played Marla. She did the skateboarding murder mystery classic Gleaming the Cube. Mm-hmm. And the 1990s The Forbidden Dance. And then...
Lambada? Was that what that was? The Forbidden Dance?
Yeah. And then Michael Bell had some real actual voice acting chops. Michael Bell was Ronaldo. He was Drew Pickles in Rugrats, played several of the Smurfs, played Prowl, Scrapper, and Swoop in Transformers the movie, and was Duke on G.I. Joe. Other voices, though, this is where it gets interesting. The other voices are people we know. Janet Waldo, mm-hmm. Judy Jetson, John Stevenson from the Transformers, and Tess McNeil, who is Dot Warner on the Animaniacs, and Babs Bunny in Tiny Toons. So listed as other voices are the true talent on this thing.
And Janet Waldo, I recognize her voice in one of them. So I think there may be two episodes where Ronaldo has, there's a girl that really is crushing on him, and then one where he's got a girl that he really likes and he's just awkward around. But the one that really likes him, I identified immediately, like, that's Cindy Bear.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There's about this, like, very kind of coy, shy, slightly southern hint to her voice. Yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's totally Janet Waldo.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting that the main characters, besides Ron Palillo, because he was a legitimate actor, mm-hmm. these other three really didn't...
Well, but Michael Bell was pretty...
Michael Bell,
I mean, he was prominent. I mean, he was kind of prominent throughout the 80s cartoons. Like, Duke is not a small thing.
That's true, yep.
That's significant, but... And it was fine.
But
I mean, the voice
Marla,
acting is
Lisa, and Carlos, it's like they did this thing and then went on with their lives.
Yeah, I mean, and the voice acting was fine.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
For the most part, I mean, there was nothing other than just the grating annoyance of Rubik's voice, but that's not Ron Palillo's fault. That's
altered.
That's like this sped up, annoying, almost intentionally. I don't even know the word for it.
Intentionally,
just like
high pitched and
it's like piercing to a point that it's just like
just shut that thing up.
Yeah, it's on your last nerve within the first 30 seconds.
Did you ever want him to just twist him just to get him shut up?
Well, but then he would muffle and you could still hear him say help here and there. Like so it didn't stop him. Oh. He's just being like
Yeah, what I was impressed about, though, is that cartoon is followed by a music video by the Hispanic group Menudo. Mm-hmm. So Menudo was all about the Hispanic market, and all the characters on the show were Hispanic, too. And I don't think any cartoon has done that before or since.
This is the first time that you had lead Latino human characters in a cartoon. You had other... Latino or Hispanic characters portrayed, but like Speedy Gonzalez. Sure. I mean, come on. Yeah. You don't want to own that.
Right.
But this is not only did they have these kids, and the kids aren't dumb or anything. I mean, they're competent, and it's actually, I mean, they get themselves in situations, they get themselves out. It also showed a very stable family life, and that's unique because that's not a typical Saturday morning cartoon thing either. Most of the times the kids are just they're wilding around the neighborhood and doing whatever. I mean how Mike and Carol Brady were keeping their kids, they were living in a treehouse with pandas and a bird.
And flying in a time machine.
So, I mean, there are, you know, I mean, it was actually a really nice representation, not only of Latino characters, but of a good, healthy family relationship. Because at the end of the episode, or in certain instances, they'd be sitting down to dinner with their parents, or like they'd be going home and chatting with their parents.
And working on homework and finding their dog because their dog was kidnapped.
Yeah.
They had a family discussion about the dog needs to behave or it's going back outside.
Yeah, so he solves a crime.
Until he solves a crime, yeah.
Yeah, and like, you can say that.
You can stay and poop on the carpet. It's fine.
Well, and you mentioned Menudo. So Menudo, don't get too excited, John. It was pre-Ricky Martin, so it was, yeah. But so they actually sang the theme song. It's a banger. It's actually pretty awful. Yeah. I mean, it's all of like 40 seconds.
Listener, I wish you could have seen Robert's face when he said that. It was hilarious. It was awful.
Yeah, and I could read these lyrics. It's going to take, no time at all. On a mysterious night, Rubik Cube appeared, bringing happiness. Rubik Cube has changed everything in our lives. He's colorful, magical, lovable. Rubik, he's our friend. Rubik, the Amazing Cube. Poetry, John.
Who is the genius who wrote that? I mean, that wasn't Barry Manilow. That's no stuck on Band-Aid because Band-Aid's stuck on me.
Yeah, I mean, I do actually feel like I struggle to talk about this cartoon to a point other than just... And I've told you this before. This is the first time in my life that I've said, I mean, I love cartoons. Yeah. Unhealthily, probably. But sitting down and watching this, I even texted you the very first episode. I sat down to watch it. I got to a point where I'm like, God, how much more time is left in this? I was 1 minute and 47 seconds into the very first episode, and I was already done with it.
And you got 18 and a half minutes to go.
Of the first episode of 12 episodes.
And you were done.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, and it's funny because I'm not going to say this is a bad cartoon.
Yeah, it's not
bad. It's just, I think it commits the cardinal sin of any cartoon is that it just generates nothing but indifference within me. I don't care about this cartoon. Right. I just could not get invested. I mean, you've got, like I said,
you neither love it or hate it.
You've got this really this fascinating dynamic of these kids and their family, and I mean, part of that is just it intrigues me, but it's just you add the stupid cube in it. And I'm like, God, I just can't do this.
I know it would have been all right if it was these three kids getting into trouble or getting into situations and using their brains to work their way out of it.
Yeah.
Then it's okay. This is a family that's working together and they facing everyday problems and they're working together to get out of it. Mm-hmm. But then they got this stupid cube. And at one point, the magician comes back looking for it.
Yeah.
I'm like, why didn't they give it back? Yeah. This thing's caused them nothing but trouble. And the magician's got a case, like the guy in Frosty.
Yeah.
It was his hat.
Yeah.
This was his cube.
Yeah.
Give it back to him.
Yeah, it fell out of his stage. Yeah. He didn't throw it out of his...
Was he beating the cube? I mean...
They imply that, yes.
Yeah. Well, obviously he wasn't strapped in.
But not at the time that I threw it. It's not like he threw it out of frustration. But
right.
Yeah. God help me, I watched this series twice. There's no good reason for me to watch this series twice, but I did. Because the first time I watched through it, it was like this curse on this thing where like I would sit down and I could not watch it. I was like, within a matter of seconds, like my attention, I'm like a 3-year-old at the opera. I'm like, I don't care what's on. Like I'm looking around at everything else. Oh, look at the light fixtures. I'm looking at the carpet. It didn't matter. I mean, that was all more fascinating to me than this cartoon.
You know what was funny? So 2 episodes I noted, there was Rubik and the Lucky Helmet. Mm-hmm. So they've got a big bike race coming up, and Ronaldo had this Lucky Helmet. The bullies took it away from him, and they challenged him to a big race, and he was distraught. I'm never going to win without my Lucky Helmet. And Rubik tries to help him get the helmet back, but in the process of trying to get the helmet back, he actually completes the race and wins without the helmet. So Rubik didn't help at all.
No, he actually helped him cheat.
Yeah, he helped him through the race without the helmet.
Yeah, so I mean, these bullies are they're like one of them. They pull a full Laugh Olympics where they like take the arrows pointing one way and they turn the sign, and it makes Ronaldo go off and track. So Rubik helps him and puts him back on case, and then they end up like riding with Ronaldo like ahead of him, and they're like taunting him, and he's like, I'm gonna beat you, and he goes racing past them, and like, see, I told you it worked, and they turn around because they were going the wrong way. And like basically, and somehow then they just like, whoa, well, well, Rubik's got to go and help him, and basically puts him ahead of them. Like,
Yeah.
well, come on, that's not.
Help him find the helmet.
That was legit. He wasn't paying attention to what he was doing.
Right.
They just tricked him.
Yeah.
That wasn't like was not. I mean, it was a little shady, but you know,
Right.
it's not like they cheated.
Yeah, they
because
didn't
they
throw
were
a baseball
racing.
bat in
They
the
were in the
spoke.
same spot as him. Then they just turned around and
went the other way. And then the Pooch Napper episode cracked me up because these bad guys in a van take the dog, and they find out the dog can do special tricks. You know, they're at a dog show, and the dog can walk on a tightrope and can do a somersault and all this stuff. And these pooch nappers are at the dog show, probably scoping out which pooch they're going to nap. And they grab him up and they take him immediately to a bank robbery and say, "Okay, go rob the bank." It's like, oh, in what world?
about as smart as the horse snappers in Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling.
Exactly. It's like they get this random dog, and people who own dogs, sometimes the dog just doesn't do what you want him to do, right? So they take this dog, assuming this dog's just going to do what they tell him to do.
Yeah.
Because he's talented or was doing well at the dog show, that's our dog. We're going to take him, and we'll go to the bank right away and say, "Okay, rob the bank." And then they're befuddled that he couldn't do it.
I know he's like something simple, like he's introduced at the dog shows. This is Sparky from the Rodriguez Kids. That's a weird way to introduce him.
Yeah. They didn't introduce him as Sparky Rodriguez, which actually sounds like a baseball manager's name. But yeah, Sparky the dog from the Rodriguez Kids.
But yeah, of the episodes that stood out to me, the very first one,
Yeah.
the one
The first minute and 13 seconds. That
because this is where like you can tell where like all the ridiculous hijinks are happening. So the whole premise of this, I mean, it starts off the kids are trick-or-treating. Ronaldo says, "Okay, we've covered everything. Time to go home." And they're like, "We want more candy. Let's go to that house." And he's like, "It's abandoned and haunted." Like, "Well, let's go anyway."
Oh, perfect.
You're not afraid, are you, Ronaldo? And so he's like, "Well, oh no. Well, come on." So they go up, and Rubik gets a piece of gum randomly, starts chewing it, floats up. This is a cube that can fly.
And breathe helium.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so he's just stuck to this gum. It goes up. It hits a nail up above, falls down. He crashes through the front porch, the wood of the front porch,
rotten wood on the
and somehow
house.
Ends up breaking. He scrambles and he's not cognizant anymore. But then he falls. Apparently, the house is built over the porch, so he falls through the porch into the house, like into like the basement. Yeah. He's like down. You see him like in the basement. Like, who built a porch? Like,
over the basement,
part of the house.
Yeah,
but. But I mean, it's within that first. I mean, like he's literally flying. How is it that he can't fly? That he blows a bubble and suddenly now he can't control himself?
Yeah, now he's gonna fall.
Yeah. But again, and this little cube. Imagine if you drop a Rubik's cube. Yeah. It's not gonna crash through the wood.
It's not gonna break through the 2x4s.
Yeah, go down into a basement. But that's the first 3 minutes of this episode.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh god.
What have I got?
And they get into the basement, and there's Dr. Angus, which, if there's not a more inspired villain name, I don't know what there is. Who he claims he's like right on the brink of finishing cloning technology. So they stole diamonds, and he's going to clone these diamonds.
Yeah, and
then that means he can then clone money, gold, gems, and priceless art. Yes. Priceless works of art, and he's talking to his henchmen. Yeah. So like, if you can't impress your henchmen with your diction, who can you impress? But correct me if I'm wrong. But if you can clone one diamond, aren't you good? Yeah. You just clone that one diamond over and over. Yeah. Why do you then have to steal other things?
Yeah, to clone those.
I mean, maybe
he doesn't want to be typecast.
Well, I'll give him some credit. Maybe. I'm selling him short. Dr. Angus, maybe he's just a forward-thinking individual who he's looking to have a diverse portfolio of clone stolen goods. So he's got to be flexible in that stolen goods market. Yeah. And he's ahead of us.
You put a lot of thought into this villain on this one particular.
That's why I'm staring at the wall. Yeah. But I mean, either way, he's like, he quickly pivots away from this game, and he's like, I'm right there. I'm almost done. Like, oh, a floating cube. That's going to be our focus now.
Yeah.
I forget all this work I put in this because
I want that cube.
Yeah, because these kids were out on the porch. So we need to like terrorize them and steal their cube. Oh, it's bad. And then the other one that jumps out at me is the Alice in Wonderland. I don't know if you watched that one.
I saw that one. Yep.
We all know that Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, most people know that story. They're aware of the characters that, through the looking glass. I mean, there's a wealth of potentially like, pitfalls that these kids can go into. They go into one. Rubik puts them in Wonderland because why not? Yep. And you'd think they're dealing with the Queen of Hearts or the Jabberwocky or something. Yeah. No, there's a giant.
Yeah. Not the Cheshire Cat.
No.
Not Tweedledee.
There's a random giant in Wonderland. Yeah. And they run afoul of him, and that's who they're dealing with. Right. Come on.
Could they not get the rights to the other characters? I mean, the caterpillar, anybody?
Oh, it's rough. But then I did have one other question, because it sparked a question in this, not this episode, but like when the evil magician returns. So that episode starts with Carlos being told to clean the kitchen. He tried to get Rubik to help him. Rubik makes a mess of it. Carlos gets in trouble, and then he decides to run away with Rubik. So we're running away, and Rubik's like, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, come on, quiet you, we're going.
You got me in trouble. We're leaving.
And so they go running away. And then at one point, Ronaldo and Lisa go chasing after him. Like, come on, hey, we're sorry, come back. Yeah, it's okay. And Lisa's like, I'll do some of your chores for you every once in a while. And he's like, no, I've got to do this on my own. Like, what do you need to do on your own? But he forces Rubik to basically like tie them. I don't remember what he does exactly, but like he basically imprisons them or stops them from coming after them. And Rubik's like, I don't think that's a good idea. He's like, do it. Like I'm telling you to do it. So that kind of like hit a little spark of like, so why is Rubik just listening willy-nilly to what Carlos is telling him to do? Yeah. And then later in the episode, of course, Rubik gets scrambled. The magician gets him, picks him up, and unscrambles him. And now suddenly he's like forced to work for the magician. Like, is he like a genie? Like, is he like a slave that whoever fixes him, he has to like do what they say?
I don't know. Boy, he wouldn't help Carlos with the dishes.
Oh, not well.
Made a mess of it. So maybe he picks and chooses when he can.
But he tends to listen to Carlos more than like when Carlos tells him to do something, he does it. Right. But there are points where like Ronaldo solves him, and it's like he's just what's time in this cartoon, but I don't know. It just makes it a little worse. Like, so they're just like holding this little guy as like a slave.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, he's there against his will. Yeah.
Do what we tell you to do. Lisa makes him turn her into a superhero.
Yeah, because if he didn't like it, he couldn't leave. Mm-hmm. He could fly. Just fly away.
Yeah,
but something was keeping him there.
A strong breeze, which apparently scrambles him again. I don't know.
I love how they were there was one, they were on a roller coaster, of course, and they just set him on the seat next to him in the roller coaster, and he goes flying off.
We need conflict.
Yeah, something's got to happen. We found 12 ways to get this thing scrambled.
Yeah, this is a rough one.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's just there's this ambivalence about it. Like, it's not bad, it's not good, but it's not like offensive. It's like, okay.
It's a thing that exists, and that's about the best thing I can say about it.
It's like the Chevy Chevette of cartoons. It got you from place to place.
Or there's like a fraction of the population at this point looks at like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Moving on. I don't have any fond memories of one, but I guess it was there at some point in my life. So.
Yeah. Good, bad, ugly.
The good is easy, and that's the Rodriguez family. Yeah. Like the kids, the family being that center point. For better or worse, they set they kind of paved the way for Dora the Explorer, like a Latina-centric character leading like an episode. I mean, I say good, depending on how you look at it, because we've watched enough Dora in my life, like my oldest, that I never want to see Dora again. Right. But I mean, it's a great thing, especially. And in 1983, that's not insignificant.
Yeah, and I thought that was, for me too, the good was the family was a good family. I mean, they helped each other out. There was not a lot of conflict. You know, they were honest with each other for the most part, and the parents were around.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these cartoons, it's just the kids. You never see the parents, you know, and these parents played a role. So I thought that was good. The bad is just that I can't identify anything. That's what...
Well, I think that's it. It's completely forgettable.
Right. It didn't inspire me to go buy the toy.
No.
Or, oh, now I got to buy more toys. You know, it's just like, as an advertiser, I'm like, why am I buying an ad on this cartoon?
In our capacity right now, it made me regret that there was more to watch when one ended. Like, oh, there's more of these. That's not the inspiration you want when you're sitting down to watch a piece of entertainment.
Sure.
Like, it wasn't entertainment. And it's not even, like, bad that it's entertaining. It's not, like, horrific like the Brady Kids or just, like, dumb.
The Brady Kids, I said, well, it was harmless entertainment. And you said, but was it entertaining? I think that's what this is.
Yeah, I think this is less entertainment.
Yeah, less.
Yeah, it's just...
I'm less entertained now than I was before I watched the show.
It's just, like I said, it's something that existed and we watched it and
I'll never be able to look at another Rubik's Cube again without seeing that blue face.
Or hearing that voice. Yeah.
Then that's the ugly for me, is that voice.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even have an ugly. I mean, it was forgettably bad. There's nothing offensive or anything that's just like, I mean, it.
I would have preferred to hear Ron Palillo's voice rather than the speeded up, you know, chipmunk sounding voice. You know, give me something to hang on to. But yeah, nothing.
Yeah, it's a thing that we watch.
Sure.
And it will, and that's why I like remember, like I may have watched, I'm sure I watched some of it as a kid, but I don't remember it.
Not at all.
Like I can barely remember
I'm
it now.
starting to question whether I actually did watch it or not as a kid and just don't remember, because I do remember watching the Pac-Man show. Yeah. And this might have just been on after that, and I don't have any recollection of it at all. Maybe it was just Pac-Man's over and turned it off. Yeah. So out of 0 to 10.
I went with a 2.
2? And
again, it comes down to that cardinal sin of just being completely indifferent.
Just the apathy of it.
I just don't even care that this. It's not, like I said, it's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, and it gets points for the good. The good is a significant good. It's just not an entertaining good.
Right.
It's a culturally significant one, but it's not doesn't boost the entertainment value.
Yeah. I landed at a 3. Just because I thought it had good bones, and I thought they could have done better things with it, but
if it wasn't built around the stupid cube, it could have been good.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, this cube is a 7-point deduction.
Yeah.
To take it to a 3.
Yeah.
You know, if it was just these kids and these kids working together to get out of trouble, then it's a 5 or a 6. You know, but this is just
I mean, it's kind of like the annoying equivalent of the Great Gazoo.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, replace him with some other, like, not inanimate object, but something else that, you know, like maybe it's a goofy cat or something that kind of where the hijinks come from. Great.
Yeah.
Then you can, and because ultimately, I mean, the storylines just felt forced with when you have to insert this Rubik's Cube into it.
Well, we should redeem ourselves somehow. Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
What do you want to do next?
Well, I think we should, with something that we know is going to be good and entertaining, and that's some Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yeah, I can't believe I was looking at our old episodes and we've never done Bugs Bunny. That's crazy.
Yeah, and and there's a wealth of obviously of Warner Brothers cartoons, and we don't need to dig into all of those at this point. I'm sure at some point.
Yeah, let's select some that have got Halloween themes, and,
yeah,
and we'll work on that.
Yeah, we'll each pick a handful, and then we'll watch them, and then we can come back and talk about that.
Awesome, I love it.
Excellent.
Well, I hear, Mom, I think it's time for us to go outside. So that means cartoon time is over. I'm John.
I'm Robert.
And this is Toon Talk.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you want more Toon Talk, you can find us on Twitter at Toon Talk Guys.
Or if you've got questions, comments, or suggestions, you can email us at toontalkguys@gmail.com.